Most people see player 2-1-2 Han Mi-nyeo as one of Squid Game's most unpredictable and chaotic contestants. She manipulates others, switches alliances, and isn't afraid to get violent. But if you look closely, you'll realize she may have committed serious crimes that could land her in prison for life. Throughout the game, she physically assaults other players, threatens violence, and ultimately kills Deok-su in what some call revenge, but others might see as cold-blooded murder. The question is, would she actually be prosecuted for her actions if the Squid Game was exposed? Could she claim that everything she did was for survival? Or would the courts hold her accountable for assault, conspiracy, and even murder? The truth is more complicated than you think. So let's break it down and figure out how long player 2-1-2 would actually spend behind bars. At first glance, Han Mi-nyeo, player 2-1-2, seems like just another contestant trying to survive. She plays dirty, manipulates others, and isn't afraid to use people to get ahead. But here's what most viewers didn't catch. Many of her actions inside the game could be considered actual crimes. Think about it. She assaults other players, threatens violence, and kills Deok-su in a moment of revenge. Some people argue that she was just doing what she needed to survive. But legally speaking, can survival be used as a defense for murder? If Squid Game was a real event and law enforcement took down the operation, would player 212 walk free? Or would she face criminal charges? South Korean law is strict on violent crimes, and her actions could be classified as assault, conspiracy, and even murder. But here's the tricky part. While she was violent, she was also reacting to the dangerous environment around her. Could she claim self-defense? Would the court see her as a victim or a criminal? To find out, let's take a deeper look at the specific crimes she committed and whether she'd actually go to prison for them. Player 212, Han Mi-nyeo, wasn't just another contestant in Squid Game. She was one of the most unpredictable and dangerous players in the game. Some fans see her as a survivor who used her wits to stay alive, while others see her as manipulative, violent, and even capable of murder. But what does the law say? Let's break down her biggest crimes and figure out whether she would actually face legal consequences. Throughout the game, Mi-nyeo proves that she's not afraid to get physical. She pushes, hits, and threatens contestants multiple times. One of the biggest examples is when she attacks Deok-su in the dorms, clawing at his face and threatening him with violence. In South Korea, Article 260 of the Criminal Act states that assault, even without causing serious injury, is punishable by up to 2 years in prison or a fine. If the attack leads to severe bodily harm, the sentence increases. While most of her fights might seem minor, the fact that she repeatedly engages in physical violence could lead to multiple assault charges, adding years to her sentence. But does that make her a criminal? Or was she just playing the game like everyone else? The biggest legal debate around player 212 is whether her killing of Deok-su was murder or justified revenge. In episode 7, after Deok-su betrays her and leaves her to die, Mi-nyeo takes revenge by grabbing him and pulling him off the glass bridge, killing them both. But was it murder? Under South Korean law, murder carries a minimum of 10 years in prison, with life imprisonment or even the death penalty possible for premeditated killings. However, Mi-nyeo could argue that this was not murder, but self-defense or provocation. Deok-su had already betrayed and threatened her, and in that moment she could argue that she felt she had no choice but to take him down with her. Would a court agree? That depends on whether they see her actions as revenge or survival. Mi-nyeo's manipulative behavior could also be seen as part of a larger conspiracy inside the game. She switches alliances, gains Deok-su's trust just to betray him, and uses deception to get ahead. Under South Korean conspiracy laws, being involved in a criminal act with intent to harm others can add years to a sentence. Since Squid Game itself was illegal, any contestant who engaged in organized violence could face additional charges. But would this really apply to Mi-nyeo? She was playing the game like everyone else, and technically, The rules allowed for manipulation and alliances. Unlike the frontman or the VIPs, she wasn't running the game. She was trapped in it. At this point, one thing is clear. Player 212 was no angel. But would the law treat her as a criminal? Let's break down how much time she'd actually serve. Now that we've analyzed Player 212's actions, the big question remains. Would she actually serve prison time, and if so, how long? Let's examine the aggravating and mitigating factors that could impact her sentencing. Some factors could increase Mi-nyeo's punishment and lead to a severe prison sentence. Repeated violence and assault. She didn't just fight once, she frequently used aggression throughout the game. Courts often give harsher sentences to individuals who show a pattern of violent behavior. Premeditation in Deok-su's death. If prosecutors argued that she planned her revenge and deliberately waited for the right moment to kill Deok-su, her actions could be classified as premeditated murder, increasing her sentence to life imprisonment. Manipulation and conspiracy. While the game allowed deception, Mi-nyeo strategically manipulated others for survival. Courts might see this as a sign of dangerous behavior, adding years to her sentence. If the legal system viewed her actions as intentional, calculated crimes, Mi-nyeo could face decades in prison, or even a life sentence. Could anything reduce her sentence? Absolutely. Here are some legal defenses she might use. Self-defense and psychological distress. The entire Squid Game was a life-or-death situation. Mi-nyeo could argue that she acted in self-defense, or that the psychological stress of the game pushed her into violence. Courts sometimes reduce sentences for crimes committed under extreme distress. Deok-su's betrayal and threats. Deok-su was a known violent and dangerous player who had already betrayed and threatened Mi-nyeo. A court could see her actions as justified retaliation, reducing a murder charge to a lesser offense, like manslaughter. Lack of pre-game criminal record. Mi-nyeo's criminal history is unknown, meaning she could receive a lighter sentence for being a first-time offender. If a court believed that Mi-nyeo acted out of survival rather than cruelty, she could face a reduced sentence of 5 to 10 years instead of life in prison. So, would player 212 spend the rest of her life behind bars, or would she get away with only a few years in prison? Let's wrap it up. So, after breaking down player 212's crimes, one thing is clear. She wasn't an innocent victim, but she also wasn't the worst criminal in Squid Game. With charges of assault, conspiracy, and possibly murder, South Korean law wouldn't let her walk free. If prosecutors saw her violence as premeditated and intentional, she could face decades in prison or even a life sentence. However, if a court believed she acted in self-defense and that the extreme conditions of the game forced her hand, her sentence could be reduced to 5 to 10 years. Ultimately, Mi-nyeo wasn't a mastermind or a serial killer. She was a survivor who played the game the only way she knew how. Some might see her as a villain, while others might argue that she was just doing what she had to do. What do you think? Was player 212 guilty of murder, or was she just trying to survive? Let me know in the comments, and if you found this breakdown interesting, be sure to like and subscribe for more deep dives into Squid Game. Thanks for watching. Until next time.